Hi, this is Aurora from the Educating All Learners Alliance, and today we're speaking to Sabrina Baptiste for a deep dive into teacher preparation programs. Sabrina is the project director of the Pathways Alliance, an uncommon coalition of leading education organizations dedicated to supporting and implementing quality, sustainable educator preparation pipelines, including teacher residency programs and apprenticeships. It's great to have you here today, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I
So let's
appreciate it.
Let's dive right in. I gave the little intro about Pathways, but tell us more
Yeah.
about your background in education and how that led you to your work at Pathways.
Yeah, thank you. I come to this work from both education and public health. So I've always been really drawn to systems and how they're designed and who they work for and where they fall short. I started in youth development and working closely with young people and families, and over time, really moved into the strategy and operation roles where I could help build stronger systems behind the scenes. I realized that I also was like working very closely with kids, and I was like, I don't know that being in the classroom is for me. But I deeply, deeply care about what the classrooms look like for students and what's being offered to them and who's in front of them, and also how that entire system works. So now, as I lead the project work at Pathways Alliance as the project director, which is, as you mentioned, a national coalition of states, districts, higher ed institutions, and educator prep programs that really focus on strengthening the educator workforce pipeline. And what I really value about Pathways is that we're not looking at the single entry point problem. We're really thinking about what much more broadly and about the full educator pipeline and how somebody moves through it over the time. So that really includes tutors, paraprofessionals, classroom teachers, and school leaders. And a lot of our work is really centered on registered apprenticeship as a tool to make sure that these pathways are more accessible, more affordable, and more grounded in real practice. So, for example, we developed the national guideline standards not only for teacher and principal apprenticeships, but also for tutor apprenticeships as well. And that really matters because we're really trying to help the field think bigger about workforce design and how someone might first enter through a tutor apprenticeship, build the skills and experience there, later move into a teacher apprenticeship and potentially even into leadership. So when we talk about pathways, we actually really mean it. We're really trying to like build a system where apprenticeship is not a one-time opportunity, but it's a part of a larger continuum of professional growth and education.
I love that. And there's a lot of similarity between, both of us in our own professional kind of trajectory. I started in the
Yes.
classroom as well.
Yes.
We both spent some time working together very closely, in schools and
Yes.
in youth programs as well. So the overlap between us as leaders also relates to our programs. So,
Yes.
relating to the ELA audience, well, from a Pathways perspective, from the Pathways Alliance perspective, how are educator shortages and turnover impacting schools? We know that that's a big issue right now. Yeah,
Yes.
how is it
Yes.
impacting schools, and especially thinking about special education? How
Yeah.
does that apply?
I think what we're seeing across the field is that shortages and turnover, especially in special education, are not really like an isolated staffing problem. Mm,
Yeah, that's right.
through conversations through our partners and what we're seeing in the field is that there's various gaps, and sometimes it's like a broader workforce system issue and it's not functioning the way that it needs to per se. In special education, we've seen that the impact is especially serious because those roles require consistency, they require specialized knowledge and strong relationships that you're building with students and families. And when schools are really dealing with vacancies and constant turnover, or educators like entering without enough support or without enough like background on what they're supposed to be doing, we see that students are really losing the access to stability that experts and so much data says that they need. And schools really then end up relying on like short-term fixes that don't really support or move their students forward, but it creates even more of a strain on the educators who are already there. So from our perspective, we've seen that this also affects the pipeline as well as it shapes how people see the profession. And if candidates are entering schools and seeing burnout, limited support, and unclear advancement, it really becomes hard to recruit and to retain them for long term. So we are always thinking about not just how to feel like that one role at a time at one particular moment, but really how to build these connected pipelines into the profession so that it's consistent and it's sustainable. So for us, for example, many schools have tutors, many schools have paraprofessionals who are deeply committed to the students that they serve, especially our special education students, and understand the school community as well. So why not use those folks? Why not help them build systems that can really support teaching and the students over time? And we're really working to kind of build a bridge across those roles so that way we can create stronger pipelines into the high need areas, especially special education, to better support teachers, students, and also helping support those folks that want to be in the field, supporting them to stay in the field.
I love that sentiment. I
Mhm.
mean, and we talk about at ELA, a lot of our ELA partners are very involved in building relationships, the importance of
Yes. Yeah.
that piece, whether it's building relationships with your students, with your families. And what you said is when there's vacancy and turnover, that
Yes.
that goes away. You can't even, you
Yeah.
can't even start there. And that's such a huge part of the success for a lot of special education programs and students with
Yes.
disabilities.
I've always been told that students can see when their teachers or the adults that are supposed to be in the space with them are unprepared because then your students are unprepared. And I think that's so real. And it's something that we see often. And it's like, man, how do we close that gap? And how do we make sure that the folks who are in front of these students are best preparing themselves? And how are we helping them to be prepared so that way they can support the students in return?
Yeah. I mean, we're so aligned in terms of what we're seeing as far as and we're both uncommon alliances.
Yes.
You get an interesting perspective though. You talk a lot about what's going on at the district level, state level. We're talking about
Yes.
guidance. So what are you seeing across states and districts that's working well, right? We identified a lot of the challenges. What are some bright spots or what's working well to build these strong, sustainable pipelines?
Absolutely. One thing that we're seeing that's working well is when states and districts really stop treating educator preparation as some disconnected piece that's not a part of the workforce
Mm,
strategy, and really start thinking about it as like this continuous ongoing thing. And we're seeing that happen in real time, like Department of Labor and Department of Education are really working together to kind of roll out all these amazing initiatives to kind of bridge together the workforce strategy. And I think registered apprenticeships really have been more powerful as an example. And in many places, it's creating more structure, affordable, and then also that earn while you learn pathway into education. Candidates are really not being asked to step away from work, but also, you know, stepping away from work and then also taking on debt that's not really guaranteed anything on the other side.
yeah.
So what we are
Hmm.
and in return, while they're earning while they learn and they're getting the mentorship, they're getting the support, they're actually earning wages while they are trying to get into this profession, they're getting real classroom experience. Like I said, they're getting the mentorship and they're getting the compensation while they prepare to become certified teachers. So while also like we're realizing that's super encouraging and that's what we want more partners to start thinking is like starting there and start thinking about beyond the traditional pipeline alone. And through our work, what we've been seeing is like we've been really pushing the field to think about tutor, teacher, and principal pathways as this connected entity rather than separate. And that's really why or like tutor apprenticeship work is so important. Tutors are often overlooked as part of the education workforce. They can really be powerful as an entry point into the profession, and they're developing instructional skills, they're building relationships with students, and they're also gaining exposure from the day to day work of schools. So, when that role is intentionally designed as a part of the larger pathway, it can open the door to what I like to say are like future advancements in the education space. So, as we think about how like we are advancing our national guideline standards across multiple roles, that really help create like clear, more consistent expectations around high quality apprenticeship programs and models. We're also ensuring that we're reinforcing this idea that someone can grow through multiple apprenticeship experiences over the course of their career. So we hope And we're like keeping our fingers crossed that a tutor apprentice may become a teacher apprentice. Then that teacher apprentice may
Become
become
a principal
a
apprentice.
principal. Yes. So like it's really this like bigger picture design, and we're really hoping to see real promise over the next few years as we like see this really play out. And we saw this play out with teacher apprenticeships. Like we went from two at the very beginning to now almost at all 50 states, and there's thousands of programs.
Wow.
So we're really seeing a real promise in this design, and we are like seeing strong results when it states and districts and also like EPP programs are aligned from start to finish. And when those programs are working together on the certification, on the funding, on the program design, and the candidate support, the pathways are like much more likely to last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something you said about learn while you earn while you learn.
Hmm.
It's so important to have that awareness that like most workforce programs, the people who can afford to put in a full-time commitment to
Hmm.
apprenticeship without pay are usually people who
Hmm.
are in a position of privilege to
Yes,
they don't need to work, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
they can afford to. And in full transparency, I was lucky enough to be in that position where I was able
Hmm.
to just go to school and do my teacher training and then become a teacher.
Yeah.
And that really sort of so what you're working towards is also expanding the pool to people who might not have traditionally have had access.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. And because I think those are the folks that we are missing
Mhm.
as in that space is like, hey, I want to become a teacher. I want to be in the education space, but I can't
I
because I can't
can't.
afford it. Or I have this other barrier. And I think we've come together as a coalition and as an alliance to say, okay, like, how do we get rid of those barriers? Because, like I said, there are people that are very passionate about students and wanting to become a teacher, but like, who has thousands of dollars
Especially
to
now,
spend.
right.
Yeah, and then also, there are folks who get into the education space that don't want to be teachers, and, like, we want to say, "Hey, test it out." Like, it's
Test it
okay.
out.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because, like, doctors have residencies, and there's, like so if they get to do their residency and say, "Hey, like, I really don't wanna become a
Hey,
doctor,"
or maybe this
you're
isn't my
off.
maybe I need to switch specialties or whatever,
This is
yeah.
not my jazz, like, we should
I'm
give
only speaking from my knowledge of, like, Grey's Anatomy.
we should also give educators the opportunity to do the same, and that's why, like, teacher residencies, teaching apprenticeships, and also, like, fellowships are so important because you're getting that experience, that supported experience to what being in education and of an outlet could be like, and at the end of the day, you get that final decision before you commit to say, like, "This is not for me," and I was fortunate that I got to do that, and I was like, "I love kids, but I wanna support them from behind the scenes." I want to advocate for them. I want to rally for them, but like I don't know that I could be in front of the classroom, and that doesn't take away from the work. And like now that I get to do that, a part of Pathways, like it really drives me, and I I really am empowered to support teachers and the students.
Love that. Is there a key takeaway to wrap us up today? Like, what would you say is the biggest gap or an opportunity for change that you see in how we prepare and support educators?
Yeah, I would say that having a stronger, of course, system and making sure that we're continuing to stay connected as part of the broader talent strategy, I think that's been a missed opportunity. And I think as we build a stronger system and we recognize that people could enter the profession in different ways and build structures that really help them to keep growing. And not everyone, as I mentioned before, starts off as a teacher candidate in in a traditional preparation program, and really realizing that. And some may start off as paraprofessionals and some may already be working in schools. We really need pathways that honor that reality, and really say like there's also still a major gap between preparation and practice, and too often people are prepared in ways that do not fully match the realities of the classroom, especially when it comes to supporting students with different learning needs. That's why job embedded experience based models matter so much. And another opportunity is still the ongoing support. Preparation should not end at hiring. We need stronger mentoring, coaching, career advancement structures that continue after someone enters the profession. And then I'd say, and finally, there is a huge opportunity to better connect, of course, policy funding and data so we can actually support these pathways over time. at Pathways Alliance, we spend a lot of time thinking about how systems really can be aligned so that pathways are not just these innovative pilots, but sustainable parts of the educator workforce. And for me, that's the bigger shift is like really moving things from isolation into like a real pipeline and strategy.
I love that. But it's
Mhm.
not just an innovative pilot. It's got to be something
Yes.
sustainable. Love that.
Yes. Yes.
So, how can folks stay informed, get involved, stay up to date with your work and the work at Pathways?
Yeah, I would say the best place to start is at the Pathways Alliance website. We regularly share resources, tools, webinars, and examples across the country and how we're highlighting our states, districts, and partners and what they're building. And we, of course, always welcome continuous engagement from a wide range of partners because this work really depends on the cross-sector collaboration. And that includes, as I mentioned, all of the folks, state agencies, districts, higher ed and EPPs and the folks along the way in the education space. But I would most importantly say the important thing for us is to continue to engage this big picture mindset. We're really not trying to solve like one shortage area at a time. We're trying to build stronger educator workforce continuum and really make sure that all of these pathways are connected, they're sustainable, and really see how apprenticeships and teacher residencies continue to take off. So whether someone wants to join the coalition, attend a webinar, or just contribute to one of our working groups, which we have so many of, or simply learn what others are building. But there is a place to plug in at the Pathways Alliance. I mean, we hope that even more we can continue to see that alignment and that way like folks can continue to provide to this broader vision and really we can have a stronger workforce and field at the end of the day.
That's great. It's been great talking to you today, Sabrina. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you for having me.
That's it for us today, folks. Thank you to Sabrina Baptiste. And to learn more, visit their website at thepathwaysalliance.org. I'm Aurora from ELA, and this was a deep dive with the Pathways Alliance.